Well, the founder and CEO of OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, Sam Altman, spoke before a Senate judiciary on privacy, technology, and the law subcommittee hearing on Capitol Hill in Washington on Tuesday. He talked about the advantages and disadvantages of this new technology. Several AI models have hit the market in recent months. And according to Altman, a new body should be established to license AI businesses. Over the past few months, artificial intelligence platforms have received scrutiny for the ability to alter and augment versions of reality, which has been argued as a huge driving force for misinformation. While ChatGPT is able to convert and translate human ideas to tangible projects, other AI platforms have been able to alter versions of images that seem real or altered moment in time. Well, let's chat about some of the benefits and risks of the emergence of artificial intelligence with Media Monitoring Africa Director William Bird. William, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on our platform this morning. I want to start with those hearings before that U.S. Senate by Sam Altman. He's been dubbed by the Financial Times as the AI executive with an eye on the risks. Were you just as surprised at the tone of his main argument, that being the call for more oversight, or any oversight really, over AI?
Well, I think there's it's quite an unusual thing for one of these leading tech company owners to appear before Senate. The last time I think we saw something like this was Mark Zuckerberg appearing around Facebook and Meta and all of the issues that had arisen at the time. So for them to be appearing now in almost a pre-emptory thing suggests one of two things. It either says that they're trying to get regulation that favor them as one of the early movers in the sector, or it may be that they are alerting of some very real risk that is occurring. And I think it's probably a case of both, given that some few months ago we saw a number of people signing a joint letter saying, stop this now. We need to put the brakes on a bit before we move ahead and create things that we're going to have no control over. And I think that it is likely that case, and these things are generally quite easy to get scared about, because the implications of these things can potentially have quite fundamentally earth-changing impacts and potentially largely negative impact. So there is certainly a lot that we need to be looking at and a lot that we need to be very concerned about.
Yeah. What are some of the possible dangers that you've already identified, as we sort of head into this era of society that currently has unregulated artificial intelligence? I mean, you mentioned the last time we had big tech in front of U.S. Senate. It was the likes of Twitter, Facebook, we know some of the sort of negative implications of an unregulated major tech company. In that instance, had credibility issues for the U.S. 2016 election. So there's really a lot riding on how much unregulated artificial intelligence, how much havoc that could potentially create.
Well, because it's getting easier to create things and it's easier to engage as though you are a person with these chatbots and with these systems, it means it's that much easier to actively deceive people. There's already a huge amount of concern around the impact of these things on elections in the US and the UK, and certainly in South Africa. We already look at these things with the IEC. So there's a lot of concern about it because it's just so easy to spread. If you can create, we saw in March images, and they looked really good actually, of Donald Trump theoretically evading arrest by running away from police officers. You really had to have a good eye to see that that wasn't actually something that did occur. And so the quality of these things is getting better, and you can do it with moving images. So with video, it's getting a lot easier. So the efforts that required people to spread mis and disinformation in the past, which were already easy because you just had to make up bad things, are now going to become even easier, and you can do it at scale because you can just have these chatbots out there. And if you think about your intro, you talked about the potential impact that AI has for women, and there is an incredibly large, positive thing, but there's also the often largely downside, which is that if you're a woman online, you tend to get attacked, belittled, just because of your sex. And now you can find that there are going to be bad actors out there who will use those bots to just go after and target women. And we can be almost certain that that's going to happen, and they'll do it in ways where they'll be able to respond and engage with their social media posts. It won't just be a thing where you've got, one or two trolls. They'll be able to establish an entire system that'll be able to go after people's, and the scale of that is really something quite incredible. And what will make it even more difficult is that they'll be able to easily suggest, they could suggest by changing my background effectively and changing my voice or something that I could be a different person, or that I could be up to things and doing things that I simply didn't do, and they could do that just as easily for a woman, So I think that the likelihood for abuse is really one of the things that these AI executives are saying, hey, people, we need to be aware of this. Government needs to step in, UN needs to step in and start to regulate where the limits of these things lie and what the systems that need to be put in place are, so that we know what's there. Thankfully, we have an advantage, which is that we've got credible quality media. And for me, one of the big upside downsides to this is because you're no longer going to know what's real and what isn't. You're only going to know what's real by going to credible, trustworthy sources. And so that means that the role that media is going to play is going to become even more important.
Right. All that fact-checking. William, well, let's look at some of the suggestions that Altman actually made before U.S. lawmakers. He seemed to be targeting licensing and testing requirements for the development and release of AI models. Computers, certain apps will be able to perform a certain amount of, or at least release a certain amount of artificial intelligence. And he's saying we need to make sure that we have proper licensing and testing requirements as part of our regulation.
Yeah, it's probably that and a lot more, actually, because the key thing with a lot of these companies, and this is what we've seen historically, is that they come up with these wonderful technologies that allow us to do incredible things. But what they don't do is just make that transparent, and they're not accountable. So what we really need to see with these things is a lot far greater openness and transparency. When your chatbot or your thing gives you answers, you're going to need to know where's that information coming from, how did it generate it, where's it, and are the sources credible? We know that one of the OpenAI people are talking about their system building in the ability to do its own fact-checking, so to check that it's actually getting it from real and credible sources and not just making them up, because historically that's what it's been doing. The problem with these things is simply this, is that you're giving a computer a very clear instruction to do a simple thing. What it can't do, though, is it can't foresee every other unintended consequence of that. And that's why you need to make all of these things very clear and rational and open and accessible to the public. And people need to know, users need to know, am I engaging with a person or am I engaging with an AI? And if I want to unpack what's happening with that AI, how my data is being used, where it's going, et cetera, you need to find, and it needs to be very easy to do that. So already companies are talking about watermarking images that are created by AI, so that effectively you know that it's a adopted image. There are all these sorts of ideas that are being put forward. Whether they work or not, I'm not sure.
I guess
to give an example of what I mean by unintended consequences, Professor Maribate from University of Pretoria spoke about an experiment that they gave an AI system where they said, make the best paper clips and just do it as fast, as cheap, as economically, and as you possibly can. And the system did it. What it also then did in its improvised scenario was go and take out the government, because it didn't need rules and regulations. It didn't need anything. It just went on its own haywire mission, because its mission was produce as many paper clips as possible. So something even as simple as that has a potential to explode into unintended consequences.
Right. It's all about that potential. Well, William, thank you so much for coming onto our platform and sharing your insights with us. That was the Director of Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird.